Recording in progress.
I just heard that Myerscough is just about winning, well, winning program, and that's what we want to do. We want to win, no matter what it takes. Yeah.
So our mindset is we need to get after them straight away.
We're aiming to be a championship team. We're aiming to be the very top. This isn't now about us participating. This is about us winning. Get used to winning, guys.
Myerscough 3, 1, 2, 3.
Myerscough! Yeah!
Welcome back in for episode 43 of Scough the Podcast, where we highlight the accomplishments and share the stories of the Myerscough Basketball Academy's student athletes, both past and present, as well as those who have helped build what the Academy has become thus far. However you are listening and however you found us, whether it's your first time tuning in or if you've been with us since the start, thank you for making us a small part of your day. I'm your host, Alan Gunn, and this week I'll be joined by longtime Academy coach Troy Culley, who returns to the podcast for his third visit. We'll talk about balancing coaching and normal life, get his thoughts on the state of the Academy, what he sees as the keys to success of progressing within the setup, and take a look back at his favorite Myerscough memories. Let's get over to Troy.
This is a battle. You have to be ready to battle. Let's go, 40 minutes.
That's it. Let's go. That's it. Let's go. Hey, let's go. Myerscough 3, 1, 2, 3. Myerscough.
I am unfortunately now joined by our resident Myerscough Viking, Mr. Troy Culley. Troy, it has been quite a while, since we have seen one another in person. It's been a while since we've caught up, in a video call. So always great to catch up.
What's good, man? What's good? It's certainly been a minute.
It has. I mean, for what, let me in on what Neil didn't bring you over to America. What was up with that?
I would have loved to have jumped to Philadelphia, man, but it is what it is. I'm glad he got over there to see Amari and to see Mate and obviously catch up with yourself, which is all good. And my time's coming, man. Maybe I get to go to Kentucky.
There you go. Even better. Just give me your thoughts on kind of what you've been seeing from a lot of the alumni that are now in America. We've got a handful, obviously, great Amari and Mate are the three that obviously jump out based on their stature and what they've, accomplished so far within their careers. But, you got Frank over here, you got all the guys that have been doing well with McCook, guys that you have coached and spent countless hours with. So for you, what's it like? Just give me your thoughts kind of on what it's like seeing them, prosper, have that all going for them.
Just proud, and I think that's the biggest thing is I'm proud to played a small part in that, whether it's, Pedro, Brian, Zeki, Frank, great, Amari, like Ridley, the list is so long, we have so many guys come in and out of the program and go on to other things, and then, I know sometimes people get caught up on the American dream, there's guys that are killing it, domestically, whether it's, Bradley who went to UEL, I know Sam Akano had a stint at Solent and then, has moved on. You had your Boa who was with us last year, who was doing really well at Worcester this year, So I look back and I think I pulled it up, after Amari committed to Kentucky. I went back and looked at that championship photo when we won the under-18s and you look at that team and it was, I think all of them continue to play basketball at some level. And that's what you want, that's what you want as a development coach at that high school age group where you want them to carry on playing basketball. You want them to move on to higher levels and to keep contributing to the game and to keep growing. And that's the biggest thing. Like, I'm proud to have played a small part. I'm proud that, Myerscough gives those kids the platform that it does. And, I think they're all a testament to if you come here and you commit to what we do here and what we try and build here, good things happen. Neil mentioned it the other day, like you can't cheat. You can't cheat it. You can't, if you want something significant, you got to put the work in. And I think all the guys that we've just mentioned, and there's countless others, like there's guys that I definitely missed. They're guys that put the work in and they're rewarded for that. That's the big thing with it all.
And you got to think Myerscough is just, obviously basketball is such a huge part of why they come to Myerscough. It's, it's the thing that everyone connects to when they arrive on campus at Myerscough. But from there, they learn other things that they're interested in. Obviously, you got Harry Collins doing a whole bunch of stuff with like, he's done stuff for Hoops Fix. He's done stuff for the BBL. So he's kind of used basketball to pave his own way out of the sport and to, other interests that he has. But it all starts, kind of when they come to Myerscough based on that. How cool is it to see guys not just continue in basketball, but continue in, all walks of life, whether it's, education, personal businesses, things like that. What's it like seeing guys find themselves 16 to 18? Because you spend a lot of time around them, not just coaching, but having been in the blocks with them as well.
It's the same feeling, like I think the biggest challenge is, especially with younger generations coming through, is just what are they really passionate about, and I think a lot of the kids that apply to come to Myerscough and come here, they're passionate about basketball, but they don't really know what they want to be. Like I've lost track the amount of personal statements where I want to be an NBA player, I want to be a professional player, and it's like it's great to have that dream. I think when I was younger, I wanted to be a professional player, and I realized, that wasn't necessarily going to be the case. But basketball's been a incredible vehicle for me, and it's taken me to so many different places and completely changed my life. And I think it's the same for some of the kids that come here. Is some kids come here of a certain level and they pursue basketball, and that's phenomenal. Other kids, they come here and they don't necessarily know who they are, where they fit within society, who they are as a person, and all they do know is they like basketball. And basketball allows them, over that 2 year period or that 3 year period from 16 to 18 or 16 to 19, they get to figure themselves out. And it might be that they get to the end of that time and it's okay, like I've done the sport BTEC and I've realized I don't necessarily want to go into sport, but I want to go and study this. Well, you can go and do that because you've developed those transferable skills. You've lived away from home, you've managed academics, basketball, at a much younger age than most people move away from home. And I think that those are the things that really stand out. Is just, yeah, okay, it's basketball and it's great that basketball continues to open doors, but it allows them to do so much. They might go and referee, they might go and coach, they might go and table official, they might use basketball and carry on playing basketball at a different university and study something different, but they've still got that love for the game. And it's just great to, like I said, I'm proud for the guys that continue in basketball. I'm proud for the guys that use basketball to improve their life in a number of different ways. And it's just a platform that we provide. It captures the essence of, young, aspiring athletes who are passionate about the sport, but then it's using that to then help them make decisions which will impact their lives. And yeah, it's certainly a great thing to be involved in.
And I got to ask you now, because you mentioned, I actually did a feature on a lacrosse player over here in America that, her dream was to go play, like you say, at a university, realized other thing kind of came in, but she had it takes a lot of maturity to be able to tell yourself, okay, I'm okay with saying that this sport might not be going past this certain level. And, for you, obviously you were a player, moved into coaching. It's going back probably several years now for you. But, what was that moment like, for you at that age, realizing, okay, basketball might not be for me as a player, but I can still be involved as a coach. I can still be involved in the game, for you, and seeing a bunch of guys come through the academy will go through that process as well. When you look back at your own journey into realizing that, how do you cope with that? And how do you kind of allow yourself to be able to admit that, but also be okay with that decision? Because everyone, I think, at some point gets to that age where you realize that elite sport, might not be your end goal, but you can still use that. You take it as far as you can until you get to that, level. For you, what was it like, looking back to maybe admit that to yourself and then moving into coaching? And, what's your advice for guys that might now be going through that at the academy, whether it's Myerscough or any other academies, in England?
I think the biggest thing is just always reminding yourself why you picked up the basketball to begin with. I'm lucky, like I passed my level one coaching in 2006. I've just finished year 18 at the age of 33, which is crazy, absolutely crazy when you think about it. But I was sold. I came to the game late. I picked up coaching to help me improve as a player, and then by the time I got to 18, 19, like there was never really talk of America when I was younger. It was just I wanted to be part of the regional team, and then I just missed out on making the regional team. My younger brother played national team at 15, 16s, 18s. And that's when I was kind of like, well, you know what? I could see from that young age, at 17, 18, I could see the players around me and I'm like, I'm not that good. And I had that foresight and was like, okay, I'm not as good as these guys. And, we played, basketball back then and we played some teams. And I remember some of the guys that were in my year group, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not as good as those guys. And that's fine, but what do I like doing? I like coaching. And I think it was the fact that I was coaching alongside playing and I got enjoyment out of coaching, that I just carried on doing it. And then it got to a point where I was like, actually, this is something I really want to do. So I then explored opportunities similar to what some of our kids are doing now, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go to university. Right. Well, if I go to university and I'm serious about coaching, where can I go? And I remember I had conversations with potentially going to Loughborough or to go into Reading, and I ended up in Kent. And that was the sole reason I went to Kent was I went to the University of Kent. I was on a scholarship, which helped offset some of the costs for me and my family. And then they had the club from minis all the way up to seniors. So I was able to go from a small club with one or two teams to a fully established club that just allowed me to immerse myself in coaching. And I thought this is the best step for me. But at no point did I ever look at basketball and feel like I'm owed this. And I think that's the mistake some people make is I feel like I'm owed a scholarship, or I feel like I'm owed the opportunity to go and play in America, or I'm owed the opportunity to play pro. And it's like, well, all of a sudden I think you're going about it the wrong way. Like at no point have I ever been like, coaching should give me this or coaching should give me that. It's just I enjoy coaching, so I coach. And I know when I was younger, I said yes to so many different opportunities just because I wanted to coach. And I did a lot predominantly for free, just for the experience and to say I coached at different levels and worked with different people because I just wanted to get better because I just enjoyed coaching. And I think that's what's lost at times with some players. It goes back to what we said before around not cheating the grind. Although that's somewhat cliche, it's work hard because you want to get better at basketball. You want to get better at basketball because you enjoy it, and if you play better, you're going to enjoy it more, right? And I think sometimes we just lose that. And I think when you look at the kids now, it's you enjoy basketball. The second it feels like it's a job and it feels like it's a chore, you probably got to start questioning, are you in it for the right reasons? Because it is a tool. I think it's a tool, it's a vehicle, it's will open so many different doors if you allow it to, where I think sometimes people lose sight of that and they don't want to work hard, or they skip workouts, or they're not prepared to do it on the days they don't want to do it because I feel like I've got a little bit of talent. Somebody's told me that I'm good. Somebody said I can do X, Y, and Z. Therefore, I should have this. No, the game doesn't owe you anything. And we've seen it with kids that come to us, like they might have played on an okay under 16 team or an okay 16s Prem team, or they might have been to Final Fours as a 16-year-old. But okay, like that's great that you've done that at this point, but it's what's the next step? We've got to keep on moving forward. We've got to keep on working, and you just got to enjoy the process of getting better and not when you're 16 think, I'm owed this. No, like this, and I think go back to the guys that we had and the comment I made before around the kids that have come to our program and stuck it out for the time they're supposed to be with us have thrived because they figure themselves out along the way. And I think that's the most important thing. They don't get caught up in the bright lights. It's just getting better every day. And that's what I think is important.
We've got guys that progress through the academy at different levels. You have guys that come in day one, exactly, they're not a polished product, but there's someone that is, like your Mates, guys that are coming to the program and they are at that elite level. You have guys that come in as first years and might need a little bit more seasoning, maybe a first year, they might not be playing at the level they want to, but there's a process that they can see from year 1 to year 2 that hopefully gets them there. And then potentially a year 3. How important is it for guys? And I talked to Dan last week. He's a 3-year guy that came in, was in the first team, but might not have had the playing time, the opportunities to, because he wasn't at that level yet, but he was around it. What's the message to those guys that over the course of their time at Myerscough, hopefully whether it's 2 years or 3 years, that they can see that progression. And you might can touch on a guy like a Dan or a Lewis McGlasson who, you had to work with, and the rest of the coaching staff had to work with to build their confidence to know that they can pull that sort of level out of them or out of themselves.
Yeah. I think the challenge is, you don't necessarily know what the level is till you're in it. And I think a lot of these guys, because they come to us with quite lofty ambitions, we have to make sure we push them as much as possible. Now, they can come to us at 16 and they've been the man. They were the go-to guy at under 16s or whatever it may be. And they then come to us and say, all right, well, you're a 16-year-old that's now competing against 18, 19-year-olds that have been with us for 1 or 2 years. And in those 1 or 2 years, those guys have played in Europe against young professionals. They've played in Division 2 men against American imports, BBL players that have moved down levels, experienced British guys that have been around for years. So all of a sudden it's like you might be ready at 16. You might be ready at 16, but the vast majority you're just not. Like I remember when we first went when in Great's first year, the first stage that we had, Great was our 12th man and he had limited minutes and he just wasn't ready. But then transform that to, like some of the last games Great had with us when we had the summer showcase and, he was in destruction mode because it was just a case of, I'm not ready right now, but I'm going to get, I'm gradually going to get better. I'm going to work against these guys. And it reminds me of something Dave Smart said, who was at Carleton University in Canada. He's like, look, everyone talks about when like our seniors leave, who's going to step up and take the mantle. And the reality is the guys that was in the same as our situation, like seniors leave every year, but the guys that step up into those shoes competed against those seniors every day in practice for a whole year and got significantly better. That you might not necessarily have seen it because those seniors were the ones that were playing and these guys were underneath them. But as soon as that opportunity was there, those guys were ready to step up because they're the ones that are going through that every single day. And that's where I think it's really important that you might not necessarily be playing, but there's multiple levels for you to play at. Like some guys played a bigger role in Division 3 and then stepped up in Division 2. Some guys had a bigger role in under-18s and stepped up into Division 2. But when they're ready to step up and they know then, right, you've now got the skills to do it. And I think Dan Nawazu is a prime example this year. Last year, he could have done, he could have done more and he knows that. And we've had that conversation. This year, it was very clear, like, look, you are the guy now. You're going to have to produce. And yeah, okay, you're going to have some bad games and it's not going to go your way. But, it's just reinforcing that confidence that you can do this. You've done this a lot, and now it's just a case of go and do what you got to do. And I think the message for those guys is don't undervalue the just competing against good guys all the time. Because you're going to get better. You might not feel it, you might not see it, but you'll get better competing against those guys. And it's no different to when they go to the States. Like you might be a freshman and you're getting your kicked by sophomores, juniors, seniors, but eventually those guys leave and you step up. And you might not necessarily feel like you're getting better, but you are because you're pushing yourself against better players. And I think that's the key message there is just how much are you pushing yourself, and I think for a lot of younger guys that come in, they're the best guy in their practice, they're the best guy at their club. So are they getting pushed? Their teammates might be getting pushed because they've got to guard these kids, but they're not getting pushed because they get to do what they want. And then they come to us and it's like, right, well, yeah, you got guys that can match your physicality, match your speed, match your talent base. And now you got to really compete and work hard and to separate yourself. So yeah, I think that's the main thing, mate.
And I guess I got to ask, because you've been, Myerscough now since 2016. Obviously, you've been with it around coaching since 2006. So coming in 18 years for you. It's a long time to be around it. I guess just speaking on Myerscough, when you first arrived, what have you noticed has been a shift maybe in player type coming in? Obviously, COVID kind of derailed things, from development standpoint, in that, a couple of years where things weren't happening. So like that kind of age group kind of maybe faltered just because they weren't being able or afforded the practice opportunities. But, what have you kind of seen as the shift, I guess, in the academy from when you arrived to, present day? It's a big question to ask, but, what's something that you've maybe noticed just from a day-to-day standpoint of players coming in and, what you've kind of seen?
It's hard to pick one thing, because I don't think too much has changed from what it was when I first got here, just in terms of how the program approached things, what we demanded of the guys, what we pushed, all that sort of stuff. I think what's happened is I think you hear it in the intro to these podcast episodes, like we put Myerscough on the map. I think as the years have gone on, we've proved at multiple levels what we can do. And it's then about, like we've all said it at different points. When teams come and play us, they treat it like it's their championship game at times. We've all seen it, whether it's me, Mike, Neil, James, Lewis, whoever. If we've lost a game, like teams are celebrating like it's a freaking final. And it's like, right, okay, yeah, okay, you got a game over on Myerscough, good job. So I think that has increased more and more, but I think the other thing is just the opportunities that we now give. I think, being one of the first to do it in Europe, I think that's a big thing. Nobody had done that. Whether it was senior competition, junior competition, nobody had done what we did, when we flew out there and not knowing what we're going to expect those first couple of years in the EYBL and then turning around and winning that competition. That put us on the map and it gave us respect on the continent. And then because of that, I think that really forced us to, nail down on what we need to be doing, what's our identity, and I think one of the phrases is, it's not about just turning up and competing anymore. It's about winning. Like we are a winning program, and I think it's been a challenge with COVID. It's certainly been a challenge, obviously, over the last 18 months with Neil's situation, but we are a winning program, and I think now it's more than ever. Like our numbers are way more than what they were when I first started here. There's more teams, there's a bigger staff. We're able to do a lot more. Like we had the EYBL trips this year. The boys went out to the HMBT. Like I think our provision has consistently grown, and then I think now it's just a case of because of our profile and what we do, there's just more and more guys that are going out and representing Myerscough at different levels. I think that's just a testament to what's been built here, a testament to the guys that started the program and laid the foundations, the guys that then have come through and lifted it. And then it's just that notion of if you're coming in, the banners that are hanging from the rafters, they don't just appear. Like a lot's gone into hanging that stuff. So what are you now going to do to add to that? And I think it's just that constant reinforcement of we've got to be better. We've got to be better. We've got to push harder. We've got to do all these different things. And I think that's the biggest difference. Is it's now about we've established ourselves. We just got to stay there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the last 18 months has been quite hectic. You had to step into a larger role with Neil having to deal with his health situations. Just process what the last 18 months have been like. Obviously, we've talked about it off camera about it and how difficult of a period it was. Everyone kind of goes through things where, it seems like things are going great when they probably aren't, whether it's more workload, stress that just gets added on because you're having to do more, just life happens. So for you, just kind of what's that 18 months been like? How have you kind of handled being in a larger role and having kind of take care more of the day-to-day stuff? Like, because it's like you say, it's tough, and it's when it gets dropped in your lap, it's kind of, you have to figure out how to process all of it. And that can be tough to do.
That's a loaded question. It's been a roller coaster. I think I've experienced every single emotion possible just because it's not just been managing the Myerscough situation. There's, other things have happened around that time. There's my situation with GB. Obviously I was with the 16s and then removed from the 16s, and that wasn't necessarily done in the best way. And that caused some friction, especially before Christmas. And then it's just been, you chuck in the Europeans, and there's just been a lot, like I was spinning a lot of plates. And I think the biggest thing I realized was like a new sense of appreciation for Neil and just how much he managed on a day-to-day basis that me, Mike, and James and Lewis didn't know about. And he just did it to keep the program going. And having him back now, like he continues to, I don't know how he does it, but he continues to spin 4 or 5 different things at the same time. And that was a challenge for me. And it's the classic, when people talk about, the assistant coach and the head coach, and that 6 inches between those 2 chairs is it's ridiculous. And I think once I moved across into that role and I was then having to deal with a lot more, even though I had an appreciation for it, it was very challenging to manage running the program alongside Mike and James and Lewis, and because it wasn't expected.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't expected, a lot of it was trying to manage it via Neil, via WhatsApp, knowing the situation he was in. And yeah, it was a struggle. I'm not going to say it wasn't, like it was challenging, and there certainly were better days. But I think the main thing is that for a large part, no one really knew. Like I think and that was something that Neil wanted, was we just kept on as normal. And I think we did that really well. We just carried on as normal and just managed to make it work. And we still got kids through the door, and we still put performances on the floor. And okay, could it have been better? Of course, and I think that's just something every coach says at the end of the season when they reflect, is like, it can always be better, of course. And, I think we're moving in a really good direction again. I think we're picking pace up, and I think we're getting back to where we were. Like, I think the curve we had before COVID, I think we were flying, we were doing really well. And I think we're getting back to that now. And yeah, it's been challenging. And I think it's like a lot of people who get involved in coaching in this country, if you feel you're just going to rock up, coach your practice session, go coach your game at the weekend, like there's so much more that goes into it. And I think, I realized that coaching was a small part of what my week then became, through recruitment, lecturing, coaching, marking work, whatever. Like coaching became a small part because there's a lot that goes into running these programs, which I don't think, some people realize at times, and it's the same across anything, and I think, yeah, it was a challenge, mate. It was a challenge.
And just what did you learn about yourself? Because obviously, when I was there, you would go on, I would call you up and be like, hey, are you going to breakfast? And you're like, I'm in New York having a coffee. How do you kind of balance, what did you learn about yourself? And then also adding on to that, how do you kind of balance coaching with being able to just sometimes take a breath? And I think maybe, Neil doesn't like to talk about it as much because he's been through it, but how do you kind of now sometimes take a breath and realize that there's sometimes larger things in life that, you can take a pause on coaching, you can take a pause on, maybe watching film to, just breathe, maybe refresh yourself, do something other than, it takes you away from basketball for a minute. Because sometimes that's the best thing to do to keep you motivated, to keep you, having that love for the game. What have you learned about yourself, you think?
I think the biggest thing is it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on, with when we're talking about the players here, like you got to enjoy it. Why did you start playing basketball? Why did I start coaching basketball? And, if it gets to a point where it feels like it's a chore, that's when you've really got to just check and, have a little think about where you're at and what you're doing, and I think one thing I've realized over the last 18 months or so with the roller coaster that it's been is just recognizing when I need to take time for myself. Like it's like I'm struggling, whether it's struggling to focus, struggling to sleep, whatever. Like it's a pressure environment. Coaching is a pressure environment, no matter what level you're at, because no matter what level you're at, you're going to want to perform at that level, and therefore wanting to perform is going to bring certain pressures. So I think a lot of us as coaches go through the same things, and a lot of us just go through it in silence, and we try and find a way through. And sometimes you do find a way through, and sometimes there's a cost for that. Sometimes you don't find a way through, and there's a cost for that. But I think the most important thing is just finding things which you can have that balance, where it isn't basketball all the time. Like you've got to find some other interests, and it reminds me a lot of what my coach and mentor, Rick Waldridge used to say to me, who's no longer with us. He used to always talk about don't put all your eggs in one basket. And when I was a young coach, I didn't really appreciate it. I'm like, no, like I want to be coaching. I want these opportunities. I want to improve. I want to be at this level. I want to be a national team coach. I want to do X, Y, and Z. And now as I get older, I'm like, actually, I know what he means. Like you've got to prioritize your friendships, your family. You've got to prioritize some interests where, when you've had a bad game or a bad performance, like you can go and take yourself off and just switch off and, and then come back and revisit it when you've got a clearer mind than just trying to find a way through it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things is just knowing when you need a break and then being okay with that. I think that's sometimes we try and normalize just going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And we get to a point where there's something's got to give at some point. And more times than not, and I've had some conversations with coaches this year and, they've struggled and it has got to a point where like it's gone, and I think I've been very close to that, very close to thinking like this is too much,
Yeah.
But I think the big thing, for anyone who's listening is just, you got to find that balance. The reality is yes, we all care and we want to perform and all those sorts of things. And there's frustrations when it doesn't go well, but it carries on going. And I think that's the thing I think about now is like a lot of my reflections and thoughts at the moment are on this last year. This time last year it was probably on that season, but I'm not thinking about the stuff which was bothering me 2 seasons ago or 5 seasons ago. And sometimes you just got to let it go. And I think sometimes we prioritize too much trying to fix everything, and it's like you got to let some of that stuff go and try and focus on the things you can control and the things you can impact. And, if those are things which you realize you can make an impact and you can change something, then right, let's plan for that. Let's look at that. But I think that's some of the biggest things I've learned is just some things are out of your control. And even with the GB stuff, like, God, the amount of stuff that's happened over the last 2 years, Jesus. But I think my first year was very different from my second year. My first year, I was a first year head coach and I worried about everything. My second year, I'm like, look, some curveballs are going to come our way and we've just got to do our best with them, and that's all we can do. Because if you worry about too much, you get consumed by it. And I think that's the biggest thing I took from obviously this period of time now is just it is going to be different, like, and I say that about anything. Like if you take the head of the program away from any program in the country, it's going to be different. And you have to accept that and just try and find a way to navigate that in as best way as you can. And I think, yeah, it's different, man. It is challenging.
How would you say you've learned to deal with losses in terms of games? Because obviously, before you, they'd probably weigh on your mind a little bit. Having been in charge of the program, for the last, several, like 18 months, and kind of been in a higher, so have you learned, with everything that you've learned, about how to handle certain things? How is it that you're handling losses, in games now, versus then what you might have done, 18 months ago? Do you feel like you've changed in that regard a little bit?
Absolutely not. Like I hate to lose. Like just I hate it. So I'd love to say I've changed. But you've seen me on the sidelines. A lot of people have seen me on the sidelines. Like, and the guys can certainly attest to this if when you speak to them. Like I don't like losing. I don't at all. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Um, I don't think that's why we're involved in this. Like I think, yes, we all enjoy basketball, but we keep score for a reason. There's a winner, there's a loser, and I know what side of the fence I want to be on. That's as clear as it is, right? It doesn't matter whether it's me at Myerscough or, me playing basketball at 13, 14 years old. You want to win.
Yeah.
And I remember, playing as we were growing up, and it was, you're playing 5 on 5 and you've got teams of five on the sideline. If you lost, you were out the rotation. It could be 15, 20 minutes before you got back on the court again. So then you realize, right, we need to figure out a way to win because I want to stay on the court because I don't want to sit down. And I think so, yeah, I think I'm in terms of accepting losses, I think I'm a little bit better in I don't go into like a dark place. I think sometimes I've carried losses for a few days or I've been really caught up about it. And I think it goes back to now just what was the game plan? When we look back at the game plan, what happened that we prepared for? What didn't happen? So like what did we prepare for that happened? What do we prepare for that didn't happen? What didn't we prepare for that happened? And then what didn't we prepare for that didn't happen? And it's just kind of thinking about those things and saying, you know what, like we've done as good a job as we could to prepare. And on the day, we just shot the ball terribly, or we, have bloody more turnovers than Mr. Kipling. Like it could be anything, like sometimes you just got to accept it for what it is. Where in the past, I would go down like, trying to like dissect every little bit and sometimes it isn't that. Sometimes it might be something that's glaring you in the face. Why did you lose the game? Well, we lost the game by 3 and we missed 15 free throws. So there's no point diving into all the other stuff like we missed 15 free throws. Or, we lost this game and we had 17 turnovers. And of those 17 turnovers, they scored 21 points. Well, that's the game right there. So you could dissect like the little bits of how many times were you beaten 1v1 or how many times missed a box out or how many times was the screen not quite set? And you could analyze all of that stuff, but sometimes it's just looking at the big things that are glaring you right in the face. We were 3 of 27 from the three. Right, well, that's not good. So again, it's looking at some of those, and you could go back and say, right, of that 3 of 27 from three, let's look at those shots taken. Okay, of those 27 shots, 23 were good in rhythm shots we live with. 2 of them were wild step backs, right? So we can address those 1 or 2 crazy shots, but actually we're getting good shots. They're just not hitting them. And I think that's what I've got better at is just saying, okay, like what's the big stuff? What's the glaring issues? Let's address that and not trying to micromanage. I think sometimes you get caught in micromanaging the game and trying to call every possession. And sometimes you just got to let the players play, especially at this age group. You got to let them play. They've got to make some mistakes. And okay, you've got to hold them accountable for sure, but you got to allow them to grow. And, you can use film and that sort of stuff. But I think my processes have probably changed from where I am now than where I was. But yeah, I don't like losing. I think anyone does.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, no one likes losing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So you had the chance to really coach at a whole bunch of different levels here, from school age all the way right through to some elite level teams with it, whether it's out in the UIBL with GB, with England under 16s. What's it been like having those experiences? Obviously, GB is one that maybe hit a little sour in terms of the way it ended, but you have to be able to appreciate that, if you set that goal out that you wanted to be a national team coach, you were able to fill that. For you, what's it been like to be able to, check off some of these boxes, to coach at a European championship, to coach against some really legitimate teams out in the UIBL, coach against some great D2 teams. What's it been like to, to look back at those experiences and have those, as part of your overall resume?
I love it, man. I love it. Like yeah, I remember then, like, I don't want you to bleep anything out, so I had to curb myself. But I love it. Like, and this is the thing, like, when I was younger, I enjoyed coaching, and I think one of the driving forces that I had was, my mentor, Rick. And, Rick had coached national teams for 30 years. And I said, look, I'm going to coach a national team before you did at your age. Like, that's a personal challenge for me. Like, I'm going to do it. And it happened. Like, I was appointed, and then COVID happened. And obviously during that COVID period, Rick passed away and didn't necessarily get to see me coach at Europeans. But for me, it's like I've always thrived wanting to move up levels, and the challenge that then comes with that, because I think, when you move up levels, it forces you to adapt. You then have to, yes, you're game planning, but then it's like, what are your in-game adjustments like? How are you, what are you saying in timeouts? What adjustments are happening in timeouts? What are you going to do differently coming out of that? What are you doing differently coming out of the half? Are you changing your coverages in a game? And that's what I, fell in love with, is just the nuances of the game, and coaching, and really embracing that, and, putting the guys in situations where they can go and perform. And it's figuring it out, like, how can I get the best out of player X versus player Y? And being here, it's essentially we're at the forefront of where we're at. Like, when it was under 18 Premier, it's the best under 18s in the country. When it's EABL, whether I was the assistant or the head coach, it's the best under 19s in the country. Whether it's, GB with the under 16s, you're going against the best under 16s for the most part in Europe, and you're going against good coaches that will make adjustments. Whether it's the EYBL and you're playing against, players who are professional and come from professional clubs, and these are the clubs that feed the senior teams. And yeah, that's what I love. Like, that's where I think that's where real coaching is for me. And I'm very, very lucky that, over the time that I've been here, I've assisted really good coaches. Like, I've learned a lot from, working with Lewis, working with Mike, working with James, working with Neil. You've got Mike, Mike and James are two decorated professionals that have a wealth of experience that I've been able to lean on. Neil was a young coach in the BBL and has built this program and done ridiculous things within the game that I've been able to learn from that. And, Lewis has been involved in Northwest basketball, and, was a long time assistant with me before he's then come back in as a head coach. And you learn from that. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that I've been in a situation where I'm around good people, I'm coaching at a good level, and I've been able to go to loads of different countries. I think at one point, at the height of it, we're traveling 3-4 times a year. And I think this year, I think we played 60 games or something, like 60, 65 games across our first team, which is it's mental.
That's crazy.
It is mental. But I go back to, when I was 17, 18, I wanted to be in a situation where I was coaching. And I've done a lot of coaching over these years, man. A lot of coaching.
You mentioned the EYBL, and we always harp on the EYBL in terms of, a good measuring stick in terms of where we're at against some of those top teams. We looked at, I sent you that list the other day of, the Latvian, Estonian, under 23s to that are standouts to watch, players to watch. And I mean, of the 10 guys or whatever on the list, I mean, when I went back and looked, pretty much all of them had come from the EYBL at some point in their time, whether it was at, U14, U16, then the U20. So at some point they had played within the EYBL and are now players to watch at, professional level and playing in professional teams. So to look at that and to see where our guys are getting an experience against what could be, some top end players, how important is it for them just to see competition in different forms, whether it's in the EYBL, with D2 in terms of, some of the guys that may come from America to play over here. They're getting so many different experiences as players, that's just got to be something that, they should have to take advantage of.
Hot take, right? I think for the most part, we do a better job if kids stay in this country of preparing them to go and play overseas than if they leave this country early and go to the States. Like I will happily say that. Like I think there's too many examples of kids which go to the States at 14, 15, 16 years old. Now, if you're going to a top program, great. Like that's phenomenal. Like and that's rare. Like it is rare. But there's examples all the time of take Jeremy Sohan, for example. He was what ranked in the top 100 in high school, did a year, and goes back to Germany, and I think for me, it's like we do a really good job of teaching them how to play, playing against different coverages, playing against different levels, playing against different, not just competition levels, but levels in players that it forces them when they do go over to the States, their basketball IQ and what they've been exposed to it in most part is so different to I guess what the average Americans, is dealt with, and obviously that's a generalization for the most part, but most kids like high school basketball, some of the stuff I've seen is painful, and that's not just high school basketball, but like AAU and that sort of stuff. Like if you're in a good situation, then that's fantastic, but there's a lot of bad situations, and I look at some of those situations, say actually like that's nowhere near on the level of what we can offer here. Or like some of the other academies in the UK, like our provision where you are in really good facilities with high level coaches being coached every day, and you're competing on a Wednesday, you're competing then at the weekend, probably at a senior level, you're getting 2 good games a week, playing against good competition, with, in my opinion, like the right rules. You're playing with a shot clock. You're playing like it's just different, and I think that's what sometimes gets lost. I think we do a really good job of that, and I think it's just how do we keep maximizing that is the next challenge.
Absolutely. What does your summer look like for 2024?
Yeah, so we're about a month out from the GB under 20 starting. So although my time with the 16s was abruptly ended, different conversations have happened, and I'm now moving instead of head coaching, I'm moving to an assistant role with the 20s. We start in Sheffield in a month. Have a camp in Sheffield. Then we've got prep games in Bulgaria, prep games in Finland. Got 2 more domestic camps, and then we're back in Romania. So I'm traveling to the same place I was at last summer with the 16. So I know the city, which is it's good to have that knowledge already.
He knows this. He knows the
And
good food
then
spots.
I always know the good food spots.
We can tell.
Um, There we go. And then that wraps up. That wraps up early July, which I'm really looking forward to. It's a different challenge, but I like the fact that it finishes earlier because I think some of the challenges last year and the year before is the 16s finished like August 23rd, and then August 25th, 26th, I'm back into Myerscough and we're into preseason. And I didn't feel like I had that break where I'm really looking forward to this new challenge. It's a condensed 5 week window where it's literally crazy, 5 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 2 days off, and we go for that whole period. But I'm looking forward to it, man. Good challenge, exciting challenge, and we'll see what happens.
Speaking on the food spots, been in Preston long enough. Where are the places that you like to go hang out, go eat food?
It's a good one. You know what? I don't think you went to Auction Eats when you were here.
I don't think I did.
No, there's Italian down the road, which has become quite a frequent lunch spot, and also an evening spot. So there you go. That's some free promo for them. But as a Myerscough staff, we spend way too much time there. But it's good food, so you can't complain.
And we spoke, joked about Amari and his brioche affliction, in his first stage. For you, how does the food out there compare? You'll eat anything. What are some of your key core memories of heading out into the YBL? And obviously the basketball is great, but you got to go to
the first one. The first stage me and Neil went on, we were staying in a hostel and we're in Tallinn, and I think I've got the photo still on my phone somewhere, where we came down to breakfast, and it's on a similar vein to, like, I can see why Amari only ate brioche. Like, it literally was one piece of bread, one slice of like luncheon meat, a piece of lettuce, and like half a tomato. And I think I ended up making a face out of it. I was like, this is crazy. Now, okay, it seems to have progressed a lot since then. And now, like, we're really looked after, and the food is a lot more varied than the days where it was, this is the option. What is it? This is the meat option. Do you know what meat it is? This is the meat option. Right. Okay. So it's a bit more varied than those days. But I think I said I'm very lucky that, I've been traveling now for basketball for close to 12 years. And I've been to tournaments, in so many different places that you just kind of get used to, I got to eat it, like it's it's what it is.
And I mean, I guess just building on that, you've got to go to Lanzarote this year, again, Talon. So you guys have really been looked after in terms of, within the EYBL, they recognize how important it is to have Myerscough basketball within the competition. Having come from where we were just happy to be there to now being one of the sort of faces of the league from, this part of the region, what does that say about the academy's growth within the competition? And then just kind of how we're viewed when you go out into Europe. Obviously, we go to HMBT, we've been to France and Cherbourg, go to a bunch of different places, and they keep wanting us to come back. So what does that say about the profile that Myerscough, has helped build, within these competitions?
I think we've done a phenomenal job in raising a profile of British basketball. I think we do it the right way. We compete hard, and I think the product that's always on the floor is now respected. And I think you're right. Like, the first couple of years, it was no one really knew who we were or what we did. When now it's like you're getting invites to so many different things. And I think it's great that it's been recognized. It's great that we're able to do it. But also, it's you're giving life experiences to these kids, and it happens every year. You get kids that have to go and get a passport for the first time to come on an EYBL stage because they've never been out of the country, and before they've moved to Myerscough, they've never left the city that they grew up in. So it's phenomenal in that sense that you're giving them lifelong memories. And I think that adding those trips into what we do, I think has greatly enhanced the whole program, because it's just giving those kids that time together and how they bond when we're overseas. And I think you can speak to every single kid on every different stage, and they've got memories that will always stick with them. And I think it's such a nice thing. Basketball aside, like, it goes back to, like, I guess what we started talking about at the very beginning. It's just basketball is a vehicle, and it creates memories, it creates experiences, it develops skills. And I think it for us to be recognized like we are, and to be consulted by the people that run the league, and ask our opinion on how the league can improve and things like that. Like, I think it's a testament of what we've built. And I think the other testament to that as well is when you look at how many British teams now compete in Europe. Like, I go back to when we first started, and it was limited. When now, like, there's more British teams than some other countries that we used to play against, And I think it's great that so many other teams are taking their teams into Europe, not just at the U20 level, but under 17s, under 14s, under 16s, because I think it just helps grow the game, And I think it's just having that open mindedness to challenge and new experiences, and just getting different perspectives on different things, and not just being like, okay, this is the only way we're going to do it because we're from the UK and that's all I know. Well, actually, there might be better ways to do it, And yeah, I think that's one thing that I'm just really thankful for, that I've had the opportunity to be part of a team and an organization which has really driven that forward in such a positive way.
And you kind of touched on it there, but to end, just a quick one here. When you're 8 years into your Myerscough journey, which is, for a lot of coaches, it doesn't happen often that you're in one spot for that long. So when you kind of look back at your, these 8 years that you've put into servitude for under Neil Hopkins, how can you kind of sum up that experience in terms of what that's meant to your journey, as a coach? Because obviously it's another small part, but it's quickly become one of the larger parts of your career.
Yeah, man, like, it's hard to summarize it, because I'm so thankful to Neil when I was the apprentice to the England under-18s, and he gave me the opportunity to say, look, when you graduate university, there's a job here. And I look back to the person I am now versus the person I was at 25 when I moved here. I think it's I don't want to be cliche and say it's life-changing, but it has been. Like I've been given so many different opportunities, and he took a gamble on me as a young aspiring coach, and I think the platform here has just been phenomenal. And I think I've been able to use it to do so many different things. I've got my master's degree out of it. I've got my teaching degree out of it. I've forged relationships. I've been all over Europe. I've, assisted in winning championships. I've led teams to championships. Like it's hard to summarize it, mate. It's been, like I say, I wouldn't have stayed for so long, had it not been what it is. And I'm just very thankful that I'm here and I've been able to do some of the things I've been doing.
And just to finish, what's it like getting showered, after the under-18 championship, a few years ago?
Mate,
I mean, that's got to still be.
Honestly, on that was ridiculous. Like, I'm going on record now. Like, it wasn't just.
It was personal.
Back then, it wasn't like people weren't necessarily doing it. Like, now everybody gets soaked in the shower after a game. I think also some of the boys took a chance of, whilst my glasses were off and I couldn't see, and I'm being doused with water, they definitely got a few digs in to repay me for all the things that happened during that season. But hey, that memory's up there, man. That memory's up there. That was a great season.
Is that absolutely probably is that up as number one, or is there anything else that kind of comes close? What's your top three, I guess?
100%.
If that's one
up there, like that's up there because there were so many things that led to that moment. Like we lost to Manchester the year before. Up 5 with 30 seconds left, lost in overtime. That hurt. Lost by 2. Go to the Harris tournament, lose to Charlwood in the final by 2. Lose to Haringey in the cup semi-final by 2. And I'm like, there's a theme emerging here that I keep losing games by 2, and it's not a nice feeling when you're sat in the office dissecting it time after time. You're like, this is not good. So when we played Haringey in that final, the playoff final, we went undefeated in the regular season. It set up the rematch with Haringey in the final, and to win that game, it was obviously my first national championship, and it's a massive relief. It's rare to be able to do that, and last weekend. I got to see Adam Davies do it, he was at Kent when I was at Kent, and he just obviously led Canterbury to theirs. And it's such a nice moment because everything you've poured into that moment. It was no different to when, Neil got drenched when we won the EYBL title, because I know how much I was there, right? I know how much he poured into that to get to that point. And that's what some people don't necessarily see or are aware of. They see the end product, but they're not there on the day-to-days, and going through that. And I think definitely up there, number one is me winning mine, 100%. The second one then is obviously us being the first British team to win a season-long competition in Europe. Like, that was a massive achievement as well.
Love it. Mr. Culley, it is always a pleasure to catch up, and I thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, man.
Let's go. Myerscough free. 1, 2, 3.
Myerscough! Yeah!
That's it for episode 43. Big shout out to Troy for lending us his time ahead of a busy summer as an assistant coach with the Great Britain under-20 team. As always, you can follow Myerscough Basketball on Twitter at @_bball, on Instagram at @Myerscough_basketball, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Myerscough College Basketball. You can find all the latest news, features, and more information about the Academy over on our website, which is www.myerscoughbasketball.co.uk. Like what you've heard today? Be sure to hit the subscribe button and check out all the previous episodes if you haven't done so already. Your support is greatly appreciated. Feel free to get in touch with the show across any of our social media platforms or through the Academy's website. Until next time, have a great day.